If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
You are listening to Mindshock True Crime. This is the Delphi case series, episode 47, Sealed. We will be examining the latest court developments in the charging of Richard Allen, and why all of these affidavits and documents are still sealed, what they could possibly contain, the bail situation, and mind-shocking revelations from the mouth of so-called official court officials that Richard Allen may not have acted alone. Now, of course, the coincidence theorists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd getting triggered at any notion of this kind of speculation, it's weird because these goofs were so sure that Richard Allen was not only bridge guy but acted alone, and they made sure everybody knew how sure they were. They were hallucinating to know this information for sure somehow. And these authority-worshipping cultist goofs chastised anyone who dared you employ any modicum of critical thinking in entertaining any possibility that Richard Allen might not be the only criminal out there in relation to what happened to Libby and Abby. Of course, here on Mindshock, this is a logical podcast with logic and reason at the forefront. I do not claim anything is true or untrue. We do not hallucinate to know things that are not known. I mean, these kinds of basics of logic, one would think the average adult would understand them. Clearly not. Just visit any comment section on social media. But anyway, in typical Mindshock fashion, we will be examining the latest revelations. These revelations do not come as a surprise to many who think that there might have been some kind of ring involved, possibly connecting Keegan Kline and possibly Tony Kline as well to Richard Allen. And Cody, the coincidences surrounding Cody Patty we went over in the previous episode as well. Is it all mere coincidence? Again, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. The motto of the podcast here is, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, want to help keep up awareness in unsolved cases, cold cases, wrongful convictions, and more, and just keeping up awareness in many, many cases that, of course, justice and closure is deserved, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. Alright, so very interesting post here by reporter Russ McQuaid on his Twitter. One of the main reasons the prosecutor wants to keep the probable case or cause affidavit under seal is because he believes other people are involved in the death of Libby German and Abby Williams. Big new element. I mean, not new for anybody who's been following the case, but potentially. Obviously, many people surmised that there were potentially a circle of individuals involved. A minimum of 2, but possibly 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, who knows how many scumbags there are. Some posters here on Mindshock, actually, on the YouTube, I think they stated somewhere 40 plus registered sex offenders were living in the immediate area of the bridge. 40 plus. And they speculate, or some people do, that it's theoretically possible that Libby and Abby did interact with more than one scumbag, and the two scumbags might not have had anything to do with each other. And one of these scumbags, either alone or not, ended up killing them. But the other scumbag, which they may or may not have been interacting with on social media and may or may not have been meeting under the guise of some kind of catfish, some are actually speculating that Libby and Abby themselves were playing a dangerous game in trying to lure predators and possibly also inform police of their desire to do so. That long-standing rumor that Libby was scheduled to go to the police station and make some kind of statement regarding something, nobody knows what, even within the rumor, there's not much to that rumor. So they are making the case that Libby was ready to film and have this guy on Snapchat or in the cloud or whatever because they suspected, or Libby and Abby suspected, that one of these criminals was catfishing them, so they were ready to record him and report him. And they obviously didn't understand the level of danger that could be involved with something like that. I mean, perhaps they thought it was someone else closer to their age that was also involved in illegal activity, so it just didn't occur to them that it might get violent or excessive. I mean, I don't know. Again, these are all just rumors. This is all just speculation. But if there are 40 plus registered sex offenders, I mean, just the amount of sheer scumbags in that area, I mean, that's kind of alarming. Some people say that's in every area, but it's not really. I mean, you could look up on the sex offender registry. Again, just because they're not registered doesn't mean, I mean, there's a lot of problems with the registry as well. There are actually convicted individuals who are not registered, even though they have been convicted of certain crimes. But it's a big mess, and theoretically, it is possible that they might have interacted with more than one scumbag that was not related to their murder. It is theoretically possible. So, we have definitive information here stating that the prosecutor believes other people are involved. So, the wording here is weird. In some accounts, because only the people in the courtroom know exactly what was going on there, but some accounts they're saying may be involved. Here it's stating he believes other people are involved in the death of Libby and Abby. Are. Not maybe, but actually are. Now, that doesn't mean they are. That means he believes they are. So, I mean, yeah, it's really, really tough. On the Libby and Abby subreddit, there are, of course, a lot of astute posters there. A lot of Dunning-Kruger groups, but a lot of astute posters as well, and discussing various aspects of this supposedly new element, but we, of course, have been talking about it since day one. On Mindshock, anyway. Barbara is on HLN right now talking about what happened inside the courtroom this morning if anybody wants to tune in. Richard Allen made eye contact with several members of the victims' families, made eye contact for several seconds, scanned the rows the family members were sitting. He took in the environment and scanned the room a lot, rather than keeping his head down. He didn't say a single word during today's proceedings, this being November 22nd, 2002. Defense attorneys say that they and Richard Allen want these documents public. Prosecutors provided the judge with a redacted version to consider releasing. So the judge hasn't even seen the unredacted version. The hearing scheduled for January 2023 will be blended with the new hearing scheduled for February 2023, so no hearing in January any longer, from what I understood. Okay. So let's examine these two elements, because they are, I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, this is quite an unusual case, regardless of what you think happened. I mean, the case, the crime itself, the aftermath, and the court proceedings here, I mean, this is just bizarre. So, of course, there are different types of criminals. Now, it's tough to make a determination here because, yes, certain criminals, especially if they feel shame, they will not look family members in the eye. They'll just sit there with their heads down. Anybody that's followed true crime or watched a lot of court cases, they will see this. And then you have psychopaths and sociopaths who enjoy inflicting pain on others. They'll actually smile, flick their tongue, make statements to the family or to anyone. They'll revel in the public and the aftermath of the crime. And others still are just stone cold, which is what appear. I mean, they didn't specifically describe Alan as that, but he didn't say anything. But he looked in the eyes of several of the family members, made eye contact. What does that mean? I mean, there's not enough there. You know, we don't know his expression or anything, but it is interesting to note that he at least wasn't the type of person to be deeply ashamed. Now, someone made a post on the previous podcast that Richard Allen has totally mentally ill. And he somehow blacked out the memories, if he's responsible, either alone or not. He blacked out those memories So that way he was able to go work at CVS. Not just him, but I mean, it is interesting. I mean, perhaps I'll do a psychological podcast on that regarding certain serial killers who they actually memory hole their own crimes. And then they're able to function in society at their job. They're able to interact perfectly normally with all these people because in their own mind it's almost like they convinced themselves they didn't do it. And mental illnesses mental illness is just a vast spectrum of possibilities. The mind is very complex. So is that what happened here? Again, I'm not alleging it is, but one of the posters on the previous Mindshock podcast did make that comment. I thought it was quite interesting because on Mindshock, we go down every rabbit hole, we explore every single theory, and that is one I actually hadn't considered before in this case. So good on that poster for bringing that up. Because some people do find it strange that he just went on living his life completely as normal. Now, certain serial killers do that, but they also continue killing on the side. So it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Now, the second aspect of that, the defense attorneys say that they and Richard Allen himself want these documents public. Now, one has to speculate. Why would Richard Allen want everybody to know what's in those documents? Now, if he's either innocent or he was somehow coerced, I mean, if there's some angle here that we're not seeing at the moment, which is very possible, obviously we do not know what law enforcement knows. A lot of these documents are, of course, sealed, so we do not know a lot of information. I mean, it's possible even that different law enforcement groups, perhaps the FBI knows things that Delphi doesn't know, or Indiana State Police. I mean, again, we don't know the dynamics and the play between these agencies. In other cases, like, a case that comes to mind that I cover on Mindcheck, of course, the Amy Mihalovic case. I mean, there are some serious issues between the FBI and local law enforcement where each party might have had information the other party did not. And obviously, they weren't cooperating. The case is as of yet unsolved in the Amy Mihalovic case. You could check that out on Mindshock as well, ongoing series there. So we don't know any of this information here. So is Richard Allen guilty, but somehow he knows that the law was not followed, and that as a result he'll go free because of that? Even if he's guilty, or if he's innocent, or his guilt is so minor. Like, let's say, again, just thinking out loud here, this is Mindshock, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. If he was perhaps involved in some kind of lower level crimes, or some kind of online ring with Keegan Kline and possibly others, and he had no intention or knowledge that there would be any kind of murder. Therefore, obviously, his charges would be less if he's not involved in any murder, but if he is involved with the murderers, there's a connection there. That's a lesser crime, and he would want everybody to know that because right now everybody thinks that he's the killer, possibly the lone killer. So that could be a reason why he wants all the documents public. And then another possibility, again, however remote, is that he's completely innocent of everything. And he's a completely set up patsy. Now, a lot of times patsies are not chosen because they're squeaky clean. They're chosen because they have other criminal records or tendencies, or they're guilty of other things, so it's a better fit. So I don't know how many people out there believe that Richard Allen is completely squeaky clean, 100% innocent of all crimes, major or minor, in relation to this case and any other case. I don't know. Maybe there are people like that out there. Again, I actually, don't have a position. I don't know any of these people. I don't know any of this information. I do not claim anything is untrue. Some follow-up posts here. It's quite interesting how Richard Allen is happy with it being public. Don't think he would be wanting this if there was something clearly incriminating in there. Yes, this certainly made me raise my eyebrows a bit. Anxious Whale posted this. I don't think it's anything to gather reasonable inferences from. It's a good defense strategy for multiple reasons. For one, they know they're saying that won't cause it to get unsealed for a while. Maybe even 2+ months at the next date. Either way, so it risks no skin and plants a seed for the narrative that he's being railroaded. Secondly, the possibility of others involved is going to be relevant to their trial strategy. If there's others, it gives wiggle room for who actually took their lives. The longer that's in the public domain with people heavily obsessed over this case, the more time there is for other theories of the crime to grow, and their voir dire juror process aside, it allows the defense to get free real-time data as to what angle for his potential innocence seems to work with the public. Imagine how useful these subreddits would be. Third, depending on what method or reasoning law enforcement has to believe that there may be others involved, those potential others knowing how or why they're suspected could help this attorney's client, Richard Allen, out by allowing these potential others to obfuscate, muddy the waters, trip up, and implicate themselves, at which point they'd lay into them like a pit bull. Quit using whatever avenue or method law enforcement is using to look into these possibilities, some of which could be ongoing and also implicate Richard Allen. Possibilities are innumerable. One hypothetical. If they've got something through the dark web, a wiretap, or communications from one end only, via some encrypted app, revealing these things in the PC allows for a switch of use from that hypothetical website or channel, could increase the probability of fumbles or technicalities taking place that would make the evidence that also loops in Richard Allen somehow inadmissible, or could allow for deletion or ridding of evidence that may be out there. Regardless, it's a smart PR move from the defense attorney because now it's planted that seed of doubt, whether it's a bluff or not. It can't be called for up to a few months while it grows. They know people are going to froth in the info vacuum and go crazy with theorizing. Another post here. I will say it probably means there's no huge smoking gun in the probable cause affidavit, or super prejudicial information that might be considered inadmissible at trial. If you're in this defense and that kind of information is in it, you may want to keep it sealed so that it's not public and tainting a potential jury pool early on. Since you may try to get evidence excluded before trial, it doesn't mean the case is bad or weak. Yeah, I mean, those are all interesting and very good points as well. Other posts are stating here that the wording was unclear as he was scanning the courtroom. Some people believe he was looking for his own family. But still, again, without being there, you wouldn't know that exactly or be able to. We can't really analyze the body language or anything like that. Fox News 59 also reported official. In today's hearing, the prosecutor said there's reason to believe Allen is not the only one involved in Abby Williams and Libby German's murders. That's interesting phrasing as well. That's the phrasing from Fox 59. There's reason to believe. Not there's a possibility of, so that means there's some kind of foundation there for that. Yeah, I mean, very, very interesting. Some more posts here. I guess my immediate response to this is that prosecutor should tell it to the ISP and Doug Carter because they don't seem to have a problem with unsealing it. Or Doug Carter did say that, but did he just say that and he did not really mean that? I mean, how would we know? Obviously, we wouldn't really know that either. Yet another conflicting element that makes no sense to me. Seems like if Doug Carter believed others to be involved, he wouldn't have made the statement he did about the release of the PCA not harming the investigation or trial before the other party or parties have been arrested, unless, of course, they have already been arrested, as in Keegan Kline. Just my thoughts and opinions. Or they have other people's on watch. Some people actually speculate that they knew it was Richard Allen since day one, and that they've had Richard Allen under surveillance the entire time. Now, if that's true, and I'm not claiming it is, if that's true, perhaps they also have the same in place for all the other potential parties involved. Let's say they think there could be 5 or 10 people involved. If they're all on under surveillance 24/7, then it might not necessarily compromise the investigation. Plus, if they release that information and some of these other people want to run, they can be apprehended while on the run, which can make them look even more guilty and possibly get them to talk quicker. Who knows? Law enforcement has many such tactics as these. Another post here. Interesting that the prosecutor says because of witnesses and other people involved, but nothing states because it may jeopardize another case, as in the pedo ring. Because of witnesses and other people involved, they don't want to release it. As in not to endanger other witnesses? Is that what it's about? Because then you could just redact their name, right? I mean, why would you not release the whole thing, though? Redacted. Release something. From WSBT.com, Allen's defense attorneys said they want the public to have access to the documents, saying the probable cause does not suggest people are in harm's way, or that there are other potential perpetrators. Interesting. Now, so how would they know that if they don't have access to it? Or do they have access to it and they've seen it, it just hasn't been made public? Like, what's the story here? Why is it so hard to make any of these determinations? Everything seems very, very difficult in the Delphi area. I mean, all the way back to calling off a search for 2 missing teens. I mean, this is tough. This is tough. So only 50 people were allowed in the courtroom. This is according to WSBT.com. Allen walked in shackled with a bulletproof vest, stone-faced, as his case was discussed. Interesting. So they had him wear a bulletproof vest, so there's apparently some belief that he might get shot. And that would be crazy, too, especially if he's not guilty. Why investigators believe Richard Allen of Delphi committed the crimes still isn't known, as the documents are sealed. Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClelland asked the special judge to keep it that way. Quote, "This is still a very ongoing investigation, and we want to find anyone else involved in this heinous crime and get justice for Abby and Libby," end quote. McClelland argued the sealed documents protect the witnesses mentioned in the charging information, including some juveniles. Wow. Okay. I mean, that's potentially bombshell. Okay, but why not redact all their names, though? And just release, that way the actual bulk of it and the reasons are there without the names. I mean, that's standard operating procedure. I mean, that's what they always do, especially with minors or anytime witnesses might be in danger. But they don't want to release any of it. What does that mean? To support his argument, McClelland included a letter from Libby German's grandma and a worldwide petition with more than 40,000 signatures. McClelland said it would be in the best interest of the public. Quote, "We are a society that wants to know everything right now," end quote. No, but again, just redact all the sensitivity. I mean, redacting documents has been a long time practice in many different cases. The intelligence, I mean, that's what you do. That way you can do everything properly and still protect those that need to be protected. And if there really is that sensitive information that also, in addition to names, they could redact that as well. He went on to mention that Allen's wife was forced to abandon their home and the former judge to recuse the case. However, the defense wants the documents exposed. Bradley Rozzi, one of Allen's defense attorneys, argues the secrecy of the case adds to the public interest. Quote, "The law enforcement community has reached out to the public for help, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that approach to an investigation, but that's been ongoing for 5 years. And now to turn around and suggest that all that should be confidential, it's just kind of counterintuitive to me," end quote, said Rossi. The defense said they have no other evidence besides the court documents, and they said they're not impressed. Okay, so the defense seems confident. Can that be read into? If they're not impressed with the evidence against Allen, what does that mean? Attorney Andrew Baldwin is anxious for the public to read Allen's charging information. Quote, "Hopefully that's going to ring a bell for somebody to help us out because he is innocent. He has told us that very emotionally. He has thanked us for our help," end quote, said Andrew Baldwin, defense attorney. Okay, so if this is all true, that means that not only is he claiming it is innocent, but his defense attorneys seem to believe that? I mean, he's just definitively stating because he is innocent. The timeline for the special judge's decision isn't known. WSBT has been told she won't be deciding on this today. Allen was granted a bond hearing that's expected to be February 17th. Okay, that's all quite interesting. Quite interesting indeed. I mean, a lot of new information there. So there are juveniles that somehow were witnesses, possibly, according to this information, and that Richard Allen is claiming he's innocent emotionally, and the attorneys believe him. Now, to those that say, of course, everybody always says that they're innocent, but you look at other cases, the defense attorneys don't always mention that. Some of them are just very objective. They're doing their job. They don't mention whether they believe or don't believe the defendant or whether the defendant has even claimed they were innocent. It's just standard operating procedure. Here, they went out of their way to say that. What does that mean? Another poster here. There's just too many coincidences with the Anthony Shots profile. I really have felt like there were other people involved in some way. That's a good point. That's a good point there. I mean, just going back to the second sketch, does it or does it not look like that model? I mean, it just seems to look like so many people, just like the original sketch. It's just really weird. Here's another piece of info that I have not seen before. Wild Raisin posted this. The inmate who was friends with Keegan Kline did say that he thought a third person was with them. And he was told a story from Keegan Kline, whether true or not. So, okay, hold on a second. So in the previous episodes, we did go over that Keegan Kline did say, or someone claimed he said, that he was waiting in the car or whatever, or some kind of lookout. Now the inmate is stating that a third person was with them. I mean, this is actually the first I've heard of this as a direct statement. I don't know where Wild Raisin got this information, but apparently the inmate is, or supposedly, stating that there was a third person. So this is all, of course, second, third-hand stories. I'm not claiming any of this is true or untrue, but previously it was claimed that Keegan Kline was there possibly with somebody else. Now, there's another story that specifically a third person was with them. So the tally is up to 3 in these alleged statements. Alleged. It is kind of weird how all of these people are just definitively claiming that Richard Allen is bridge guy and acted alone. Like, how would they know? It's just so weird. It's so weird. I mean, logic and reason really are going extinct. So here's a very succinct theory by Bryagar. Richard Allen is the only one who actually committed the murders. Keegan Kline, under Anthony's shots, made plans to meet them there that day, then alerted Richard Allen to the time and place, ? And why was Kline searching for the Marathon gas station, and the FBI really did botch the collection of the security footage from that gas station? All, of course, a stone's throw between Richard Allen's house and the CVS where Allen worked at, and the actual bridge and the gas station. So these are all in very close proximity to each other. Then we have the coincidences that Allen supposedly also lived in Peru with Kline, or not with Kline, near Kline, possibly some kind of a neighbor, a few houses over, whatever it would be, and then also possibly with Cody Patty in Delphi. I mean, what is going on here? Like, how many levels of coincidence are there? Bellarina posted this, there have to be bigger fish. Keegan Kline is the bottom of the barrel. Richard Allen is the middle guy. My bet is there's someone else. Is this Tony Kline, or is this someone completely off the radar that nobody knows about? Lolly Dolly posted this. You'd think if Keegan Kline cast a wide enough net to include Richard Allen, it would also involve Tony Kline as well. Maybe just me being my cynical self, but children learn what they're taught. Edited to add that apples don't fall far from trees is my point. And also, like, all along, the people, the authority-worshipping cultists, the Dunning-Kruger crowd, they maintained that since Keegan wasn't charged with their murders, and it just kept being put out there that he's not charged with anything in relation to the murders, that somehow he wasn't involved. But was that the ploy all along? Did they want whoever's involved in this circle, if there's a circle involved, to think that Keegan was only being looked at for other things, and that there was no danger to Keegan giving them up because he's not charged in anything relating to Delphi? Jack the Shark posted this. Yeah, that's my thought too. Someone like Keegan Kline is involved on the very edge of the case. In this scenario, he or someone like him may not even have known about the murders until they were reported in the media. And yes, and possibly the reason for his Googling DNA and the red Jeep rumor, marathon search, etc., etc. I mean, yeah, you would think if someone like Klein, if he facilitated the information and gave it up, and then people end up dead and that was never part of any kind of plan, he would be curious about that. He would be searching that, wouldn't he? Even if he was not responsible for the murder and never even knew a murder was going to take place in the first place. It's some kind of crime gone wrong situation where he thought he was just I mean it's really tough because what do you think could happen when you're actually arranging a meet? Because if they're involved in some kind of illegal media circulation online, that's a little different than actually meeting people in person. But yeah, it's all really weird. Stray Girl posted, "There is no way that Keegan Kline or whoever was using the Anthony Shots account communicating with them the night before is a coincidence." A response here, "The day of, by the sounds of it." Klein transcript states that Klein was the last person to talk to Libby via her phone, Snapchat or some other app or media, via the Anthony Shots profile. She was also posting pictures of Abby on the bridge that day, which makes me pretty sure she was also chatting with people too. But I completely agree with you, there's no way this is a huge coincidence. So he might have been in communication with them mere hours or minutes before whatever happened. Mark Smith posted this, or actually Zoodle Nose posted this. Mark Smith responded, "I've read Klein's 196-page interview transcript. He is protecting someone, and the police have an extremely strong feeling Anthony Shots was accessed at the same time on more than one device by more than one person based on metadata and the language differences from chat to chat. I have felt from the beginning that there are too many coincidences here with the proximity of the Keegan Kline initiated searches and the Richard Allen arrest. They have stumbled upon a massive pedophilia ring. Richard Allen brought the girls to someone else in the woods that day. There were souvenirs taken. I speculate, given the depravity of this ring, that there were pictures taken and shared post-mortem." Mark Smith responded, "Yes, I agree, and I've been saying this since the day of the first arrest press conference, but there's no way they would have made that big of a show of thanking the U.S. Marshal who interrogated Klein if it didn't mean anything. Nobody has a conceivable answer about that which doesn't involve Klein. Tony might be the answer." Zoodle Nose responded, "I believe very little of what Keegan Kline had to say in that transcript, but what I did believe was that Tony is computer illiterate. Keegan does almost all of Tony's work-related tasks for his job at Chrysler because he barely knows how to use a computer. Yes, I do believe Tony has involvement, but I would not be shocked to learn that the other Anthony Shots user was actually Richard Allen. Allen's age lines up better with the age of the dad referred to in some of the predatory conversations. Richard Allen would have been 43 in 2016 when many of these conversations took place. 43 and 44 is the same age as the dad seeking pictures or Skype chats with the minors being catfished." Interesting. Norwegian Muse responded, "I noticed that too. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that all three of them used the account." Alright, let's move on to another piece of mind-shocking information. Jordan Sofer, Wabash, Indiana, went missing in May 2006, was found months later murdered in the woods. Richard Allen moved from Wabash County to Delphi, December 2006. So this possible connection, not with Allen, but with the Delphi case in general, was brought up years ago. 4 years ago, there was a post by I Love Tacos on the Delphi murder subreddit, thoughts on the connection, the Jordan Sofer homicide. Would be interested to hear everybody's opinion on a possible connection between the Delphi murders and the Jordan Sofer homicide. From my research, similarities are girls found near creek bank in a wooded area. Girls have similar facial features. Wabash/Peru, only an hour away from Delphi, possible drug-related influence. Her resemblance to Libby actually is a bit uncanny. TrueCaseFiles.com has a write-up on this disappearance and death of Jordan Sofer. Jordan Sofer had just recently turned 18 when she vanished May 23, 2006. The teen girl lived in Wabash, Indiana at the time of her disappearance. Jordan had spent most of her childhood in the foster system before she was adopted at the age of 16 by Robert and Linda Sofer. That same year, she dropped out of high school and later began working at a local Hardee's restaurant. However, during the spring of 2006, Jordan told her family members that she planned to re-enroll in high school so she could get a diploma. Before she had that opportunity, Jordan seemingly vanished without a trace. Months before her disappearance, Jordan moved out of her adoptive parents' home and had been staying with various relatives and friends in the Wabash area. She was staying with her friend and coworker, Erin Harlan, the weekend before her disappearance. The two reportedly last saw each other around 5:15 a.m., May 23, 2006, when Erin woke up to go to her morning shift at Hardee's. Jordan told Erin she was not working until later that day, so she stayed behind as Erin left for work. At a later point that morning, Jordan was dropped off at her adoptive parents' house in a truck driven by Corey Bridenthal. According to Jordan's father, Robert Sofer, she spoke briefly to him in the garage before leaving the house on foot. After walking away from the house, Jordan was never seen or heard from again. Later that evening, employees at Hardee's called the Sofers to inquire about Jordan's whereabouts as she had not shown up to her scheduled shift. This was very out of character for Jordan, so her parents immediately began to worry. They reported her missing the following day. Once police began to investigate, they questioned both Erin and Corey. Erin told police that Jordan was not at her house when she returned from her shift at Hardee's at 10:15 that morning. However, all of Jordan's belongings, including her purse, were left behind. Wait a second, so she left behind her purse and got dropped off at her adoptive parents' house? I mean, how many... Does she normally leave her purse? That's an interesting detail. Corey told police that Jordan had accidentally left her cell phone in his car when he dropped her off at her parents' house that morning. He later reportedly gave the cell phone to Erin so she could return it to Jordan. Okay, so this is a little strange. She left her purse and lost her cell phone? Or forgot her cell phone in this guy's truck. Again, how often does that happen? If that happened often, then okay, that's not that strange. If that had never happened before, okay, weird. The cell phone was later turned over to investigators, but unfortunately, it did not yield any clues. Police also questioned both Linda and Robert Sofer. Linda agreed to take a polygraph exam, which she passed, but Robert refused to take one. Many found this suspicious, but both Linda and Robert maintained that Robert took one of their foster children to the doctor shortly after Jordan left their house that morning. This is actually a little bit strange. Can anyone recall another case like this, a missing teen, where one parent, like out of a couple, one parent decided to take the poly, the other refused? Huh. I would think the majority of cases would involve both taking or both refusing, but some people just don't believe in the polygraphs, and if they believe that the law enforcement are trying to stitch them up or something, or they're just completely incompetent, then they would refuse to take one. That's not necessarily suspicious, but Jordan's case quickly grew cold. Years passed without any clues or trace of her whereabouts. Then, in May 2009, nearly 3 years after Jordan's disappearance, the case had a break. A mushroom hunter at a creek in Peru, Indiana, had spotted human remains amongst a thick canopy of raspberry bushes and honeysuckle. Dental records later confirmed that those remains belonged to Jordan Sofer. Due to the deterioration of the remains, an autopsy was unable to determine a cause of death, but police still began to investigate Jordan's death as homicide. It is believed that Jordan's body was in the spot where it was found ever since her disappearance. The clothes she was wearing that day were found amongst the remains. Years have passed since the discovery of Jordan's body, yet her murder remains unsolved. There has been very little information about the investigation, especially in more recent years. Still, anyone with info that could lead to Jordan's case being solved is encouraged to call 1-877-226-1026 to submit an anonymous tip. That is actually really bizarre. There really is not a lot of information here. So at this time, Richard Allen was living in Mexico, Indiana. Allegedly. This is weird. Anonymous posted this November 4th, 2022. I read in an online group that this case was solved. The murderer was her roommate's boyfriend who later committed suicide. I don't know if this is true, but that is what was stated. Okay, so is that just a rumor? Huh. Other posters discussing the similarity, because it's almost like she's got the hair of Libby and the face of Abby. And even though she was 18, she was 5'1" and looked a lot younger than 18. A post by Agent 847 on the Libby and Abby subreddit in regard to this case with some more details here. If these are accurate, this raises even more questions here. The reporting on this isn't solid. She lived in Peru and worked at Hardee's, which is about 7 blocks from the current Canal Street residence of the Kleins. It is unknown if they were living there back in 2006. But she was last seen by her adoptive father, Robert Sofer, at his home in Wabash. Her boyfriend dropped her off. She told Robert goodbye, and that's it. But it doesn't say how she left or with whom. She obviously didn't have a car, and she had to be at work that afternoon in Peru, which is 13-ish miles away from Wabash. One article mentions police having a POI, but no details. Her body was found near the banks of a river. Okay, this is such a problematic case. I mean, even if it has nothing to do with Delphi, I mean, it's so problematic because she leaves her purse with her roommate. Her boyfriend gives her a ride to her adoptive parents' home. She allegedly, according to the boyfriend, leaves her cell phone in the truck with the boyfriend, so she has no way of calling anybody. She talks to the dad in the garage and then just walks off. So she had to be at work 13 miles away, so presumably she's not going to walk 13 miles. So what did the parents have to say about that, the adoptive parents? Okay, so Full Awareness posted this. The person she left with left a confession note before he killed himself. That was the only way they solved this. So another poster is claiming it was already solved, and that it wasn't the roommate's boyfriend, it was her, or the person she left with left her roommate, or left the adoptive parents' home with someone else who wasn't her boyfriend. That's not clear there. Another detail here from an early article, September 22nd. This was posted on a forum, September 22nd, 2006. The article's not dated here. The Wabash Police Department is investigating the disappearance of Wabash resident Jordan A. Sofer, 18, who is believed to have friends in the Marion area. She was last seen the morning of May 23rd at 10:15 a.m. when she was dropped off at her adoptive parents' home by a friend. Sofer spoke briefly to her adopted father, Robert Sofer, gave him a hug, told him she loved him, and then left on foot. Jordan Sofer was previously from Peru and was known by the name of Arian Willis. She was adopted by Robert Sofer and his wife in Wabash about 4 years ago. Jordan Sofer is not wanted for any crime, and being 18 years old is not considered a runaway. Family, friends, and officers working on the case just want to hear from her and make sure she's alive and well. So this is kind of strange. So she no longer lives with her adoptive parents, so she just randomly got dropped off there and had a brief conversation with Robert Sofer, gave him a hug, told him she loved him, then left on foot. Does any of this make sense? This is kind of weird. Okay, so she only moved out the previous month. So, okay. One of the most detailed articles here is from FortWayne.com. Daughter Disappearance Brings Duel of Faith and Fear by Becky Manley. The Journal Gazette. The Christmas tree in the Sofer's Wabash home twinkles with white lights, and the decorations dangling from its branches include simple words such as dream, laugh, and love. But the words most often repeated on the tree branches, across the fireplace mantle, and in other spots throughout the Sofer house is believe. I guess my theme is believe this year, Linda Sofer said. For Sofer, that theme means to believe in God and to believe that her daughter, Jordan Sofer, is alive. Jordan Sofer, 18, was last seen May 23rd after a brief visit to her parents' home in downtown Wabash. When she left, she told her father, Robert Sofer, she loved him before walking down the alley behind the Sofer home. At some point after walking down the alley, Jordan Sofer disappeared, leaving behind her purse, her cell phone, and money in a savings account that has remained untouched. Wabash police have been trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Jordan Sofer since she was reported missing the day after she visited her parents' home. But the answer to that mystery remains stubbornly concealed, frustrating both police and the Sofers. Since her daughter disappeared, dread and fear have settled into Linda Sofer's heart, feelings she combats with her strong Christian faith. But there are times when a mother's worry overshadows everything, including the holiday season. Jordan Sofer had always helped her mother decorate their home. This year, working alone, it took Linda Sofer 3 days to put up the decorations. It should have been a joyful time, but for this year, Linda Sofer, it was 3 days of inviting reminders of her missing daughter into her mind. I cried for 3 straight days, she said. Robert and Linda Sofer had been fostering children for about 2 years when the girl who would eventually become their daughter arrived on their doorstep. At that time, she bore a different name, Arian Willis. And despite the temporary signs of an unhealthy lifestyle, her features bore a striking resemblance to Linda Sofer's. A new beginning. When Arian Willis arrived on the Sofer's doorstep in October 2002, she was 14, wore ill-fitting clothes, her face covered with acne, and her shoulder-length reddish-brown hair dry. Arian was put in foster care after she was removed from an abusive home in Peru. She arrived at the Sofer home uncertain, untrusting, and fearful. Sofer recalls many nights when Arin woke up screaming from nightmares. She was just petrified. Eventually, the Sofers gained the young girl's trust through a consistent day-to-day routine, Linda Sofer said. In May 2004, Jordan wrote a Mother's Day letter to Linda Sofer. In it, she stated she loved Robert and Linda and wanted to be a permanent part of their family. Jordan's request to be adopted by the Sofers prompted prayer from Linda Sofer. During her prayers, Sofer said she felt peace. After all, why would God send her a child who looked just like her and who needed a family? And the two had forged a bond that could only be described as mother-daughter. The adoption was final in August 2004. To mark the new beginning, Arian Willis changed her name to Jordan Arin Sofer. Even though I didn't have Jordan as a child, it's hard to remember her not being here, Sofer said. In addition to her new name, Jordan Sofer had a new family and a new life, but she was still a teenager and prone to emotional outbursts common to children that age. Earlier this year, Linda Sofer said she confronted her daughter over a journal entry she had made about a relationship. The two argued. Jordan Sofer insisted she was 18, an adult, and couldn't be told what to do. After the confrontation, Jordan Sofer moved out. Linda Sofer said she and her husband believed their daughter would have one wild summer and then she would return to their home in August. But long before that hoped-for reunion, Jordan Sofer disappeared, leaving her parents and police at a loss to describe what happened to her. On the day Jordan Sofer disappeared, she stopped by the Sofer home, planning to go on a motorcycle ride with Robert Sofer. However, her father told her he wouldn't be able to go on that ride because he had to get one of the foster children ready for a doctor's visit. Jordan Sofer understood, Linda Sofer said. As Jordan left the Sofer home that day, she told Robert she loved him and slipped out of sight, walking down the alley behind the Sofer's home. Okay, so the first thoughts regarding that here is, we only have Robert Sofer's word on that. How do we know they didn't have an argument and he just didn't want the police to know that they had an argument? And if she's expecting a somewhat, who knows how long the motorcycle ride would be, but would the motorcycle ride result in him dropping her back off at her and her roommate's place? And what are the logistics there? How is she getting back? What does Robert have to say about that? We need more information here because, it's just weird. That night, Linda Sofer received a call from Hardee's where her daughter had worked for about a year. Although Jordan Sofer was scheduled that night, she didn't report to work. On May 24th, Linda Sofer called the police telling them it wasn't like her daughter to not show up for work. The police took a report. The search for Jordan Sofer had begun. Hear, speak, see no evil. Jordan Sofer's black and gray cell phone sat on the window ledge of the Wabash Police Department, stubbornly silent for months. Then one day, months after the phone's owner had disappeared, it rang. I almost jumped out of my seat when it rang, Detective Scott Long said. Police had bought time for the prepaid phone, hoping it might someday ring and provide a clue that might help solve the mystery they had grappled with for months. The police had given much time to the mystery, losing sleep in hope of finding answers. These cases kind of consume you, Long said. The day the cell phone's stubborn silence was broken, there would still be no answer. The caller had misdialed, Long said. At this point in the investigation, police had already interviewed everybody Jordan Sofer had contact with, many more than once, Long said. They had also administered polygraph tests, which were passed. In September, 2 investigators from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children came to Wabash and reviewed the information police had gathered, Long said. The review unearthed no new details. Joanne Donnellan, spokesperson for the center, said Wabash police asked for the center's help with the case. The center posted Jordan Sofer's photo on its website. Donnellan said 1 out of 6 missing persons is found through the photo distribution network. She's been missing since May, but we really need to remind the community, especially around the holidays, that she's still missing and they have the power to try and bring her home, Donnellan said. The center continues to help Wabash and the case, Donnellan said. The entire thing that doesn't make sense is no 18-year-old girl is going to go anywhere without her purse or her cellular phone, Long said. Although Jordan Sofer seemed to want independence, she had also made plans for the future, Long said. Before she disappeared, Jordan Sofer, who had been a student at a private Christian school, had talked to a guidance counselor at Wabash High School about finishing her senior year of high school. I think that was important to her, Long said. Jordan Sofer had also made a journal entry about a possible career in the Coast Guard. The rest of Jordan Sofer's belongings remain in a laundry basket in Long's office. They include an olive green canvas purse with a rainbow striped interior. Inside the purse is Jordan Sofer's work schedule written on a scrap of paper, her learner's driving permit, and a digital camera. There's also a pink nylon wallet with 3 monkeys in familiar poses, 1 monkey with its hands over its ears, a second with its hands over its mouth, and a third with its hands over its eyes. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Although he hopes otherwise, Long said it's hard to believe Jordan Sofer is still alive. All he wants is to provide answers for her family. Having kids of my own, I can't imagine what it would be like to not know where my kids are at, he said. Ministry for children. After her daughter disappeared, Linda Sofer said much of her time was consumed taking care of the foster children in her home. However, in those moments when she was alone, the doubt and worry and fear would creep into her mind and heart. Then, in June, the foster children were removed from the Sofers' home, with officials saying they were giving the Sofers a respite. I didn't need those kids taken out of my home, Linda Sofer said. Those kids were keeping me on track. The problem, Linda Sofer said, is that she and her husband were asked to take polygraph tests. Linda Sofer took one and passed, she said. Her husband has refused the test. Robert Sofer, who declined to be interviewed, was so affected by his daughter's disappearance that he had to go on sick leave, Linda Sofer said. On the day their daughter disappeared, her husband was busy taking care of the young foster child who had to go to the doctor, said Linda Sofer, who was at church that day. Their time was easily accounted for, making it difficult for Linda Sofer to understand why they were asked to take the tests, which are controversial and often ruled not admissible in court. We wouldn't harm a kid for nothing, she said. Linda Sofer said she was compelled to care for foster children because she believes kids are her ministry. Since she and Robert began offering foster homes, they have cared for about 20 children, taking in 5 children at a time. Dee Gibson, executive director for White's Residential and Family Services in Wabash, emphasized that the decision to remove the foster children was made with the Sofers' best interests in mind. They were removed for the benefit of the Sofers, Gibson said. This has been a difficult time for them. Gibson said the Sofers have not been implicated in their daughter's disappearance. Now, 5 empty stockings hang above the Sofers' fireplace. Linda Sofer said the stockings represent the 5 foster children who won't get anything for Christmas. It's been many, many years since we haven't had any kids in our home, she said. I feel useless. I just pray. Since Jordan Sofer disappeared, Linda Sofer has found sometimes more difficult than others. There was the day last spring when Jordan's biological sister graduated from high school, a ceremony Linda Sofer knew her daughter wouldn't miss. Linda Sofer kept her eyes on the doors, waiting for her daughter to arrive, but Jordan Sofer never walked through those doors. With fall came hunting season, another difficult time for Linda Sofer. I dreaded to see fall come because I'm afraid someone's going to go hunting and find her. Then came the holidays. I just wish Christmas would go away, said Linda Sofer, who doesn't want to believe anything bad has happened to her daughter. I need peace, Linda Sofer said. I just pray that she walks in the door someday. So it's interesting. Robert Sofer declined the polygraph and also declined interviews, while his wife did not. On Miami County Life, there's another interesting article here. This was posted Wednesday, June 7, 2006 by Sheila Rhodes. 18-year-old still missing. Wabash police still have not located a Wabash woman missing since May 23rd, but recent rumors have caused authorities to receive some troublesome phone calls. Jordan A. Sofer, 18, reportedly went missing on May 23rd after speaking briefly with her father at his home in Wabash, according to Wabash Police Detective Captain Scott Long. But some local gossip would have some believing she had been found. Apparently, there has been some talk around town that she was found behind Max Tan, Long explained. There was a reported gas leak there last week, and Max Tan, A to C Tobacco, and Northside Carryout were evacuated. There were police cars on scene, so someone decided that Jordan had been found behind Max Tan. The three businesses are located on Cass Street. Long said these kinds of rumors are hurtful and can only delay the investigation. He added that a relative of Sofer's had actually been called by a well-meaning friend and told that her body had been found, which prompted the relative to call the police station. That's too bad, Long said. The family has posted signs of Jordan all over, and one business even took the signs down because they thought the rumor was true. The search for Sofer, however, continues. We are still getting various tips, and we are following up every lead we get, Long said. Originally from Peru, Sofer, formerly known as Erin Willis, was adopted by her foster parents, Robert and Linda Sofer, who live in Wabash. Around the 1st of April, Jordan Sofer moved out of the residence and in with the Glenn McClymonds family on Sivey Street. On May 21st, she left the McClymonds home to stay with a friend, Aaron Harlan, whom she works with at Hardee's. According to Long, the Sofers reported to police on May 24th that their daughter had gone missing. Okay, that's actually an even bigger problem, though. Because, around the 1st of April, she moves out of her foster parents, which she had been living with however many years, a few years. She moved in with this other family. There's no connection stated here. So she lived with that family for over a month, almost 2 months. May 21st, she moves, or she left the McClymonds home to stay with a friend. So is that not a permanent move? She's only staying there for 2-3 days before she goes missing. So she only stayed there 2 or 3 nights. I mean, that's kind of weird. And then she goes missing. I mean, that's kind of unusual. Is that all coincidental? I mean, all this moving in the 2 months prior to her going missing. It also states in this article that Corey Bridenthal, it doesn't say that he's her boyfriend here. It just says that, according to Robert Sofer, she arrived at his home pulling up in a truck driven by Corey Bridenthal, who dropped her off and left. Bridenthal was later questioned and told police that after he dropped her off, he noticed that Sofer's cell phone was laying on a seat, so he returned it. The exact method he used was unclear, but the phone was either given to Harlan at work or taken to her apartment. The plane dealer had learned that a few days later, Bridenthal was picked up on a warrant for an alleged parole violation. He remains in custody at Wabash County Jail. Wow. So within a few days of her disappearance, her either boyfriend or whoever, this guy that dropped her off, gave her a ride the morning of her disappearance, is already in jail for a parole violation, an alleged parole. It says alleged parole violation, but that he's in custody at Wabash County Jail. What does everybody make of that? I mean, that's kind of weird. That's definitely kind of weird. So yeah, the timing there, it's kind of hard to ignore that timing, but... So yeah, I mean, a lot of potential connections everywhere, but of course, I mean, justice and closure deserving for all, regardless of whether it was the same perpetrator in these 2 cases, regardless of whether these 2 cases are linked or not. But plenty more to come in the Delphi case series as more information becomes available. There's actually still quite a bit of information to go over from before, which I will be covering in upcoming episodes. I mean, there's a lot here in this case. So, hope everybody found another edition of Mindshock True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal, or you can become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.